If you were to ask any random person if they like water, I'm sure their answer would be yes. But do they love water enough to flood their entire Terraria world and beat the game in it? In this challenge, there are only 2 changes I've made to the game. Number 1, our whole world is flooded, of course. And number 2, we breathe water instead of air. On the surface, these are seemingly small tweaks to our gameplay, but being in a drowned world will fundamentally change the way we maneuver through the world, and the armor sets and accessories we can make use of. You'll see some pretty wild loadouts and weird occurrences later on, so stick around if you're interested. Don't forget to make a cup of tea and enjoy this video. Before I start though, quick disclaimer, this video is essentially a remaster of a series I did a few months ago. There were no major Calamity updates in this period, so I don't see this run as obsolete, but my voice sounds way different in these videos, so expect that. So the start of our underwater adventure definitely doesn't begin like any other. With us being underwater and all, we can't see a thing, so I open up my starter bag. I quickly organise the cluttered mess that is our inventory right now, and I find the one saving grace of this challenge's early game: Shrine Potions. My main goal as of right now was to make a beeline to the ocean, as that would be one of the only places where we'd get good accessories. Namely flippers, possibly even a trident, which are essentially the cloud in a bottle and Hermes boots of this playthrough. And if we could obtain some flippers, that would grant us infinite flight. But, oh no, looks like we've run into a problem already. Our game is frozen. I quickly jumped to the conclusion that the game was just trying to load all of the water at once and completely died. And after about 2 minutes, we were back in action. Let's just hope this doesn't happen again. Spoiler alert! Well, this time it only took about a minute for the game to regain consciousness, but we were getting completely pummeled by a zombie. Okay, let's try going underground instead. We could probably find some underwater chests down there. But then jellyfish happened. I found a golden chest, which we're surprisingly not as excited about. But there was a magic mirror, so I'll happily take that. We found a cave house, giving us one of the most useless items in this challenge, a cloud in a bottle. Yeah, I promise this will get interesting soon enough. Ah, there we go, the sacred water chest we was after. However, it's guarded by a blue jellyfish. Whatever shall we do? Now see what we're... Oh, an inner tube. Okay, we can work with that. Not exactly what I wanted, but we can still make use of it. Just like the flippers we was after, the inner tube would still grant us infinite flight, albeit with much less precision. And I'm sure you can guess, the main reason we was after a method of vertical transport is planetoids. Of course there's the ones that give you life crystals, gems and ores, but we was after this one specific jungle one that is guaranteed a water chest inside. So as long as we can get one flipper or inner tube, we'll basically have a snowball effect of water chests. Anyways, the trident. If the flippers are the cloud in a bottle of this challenge, then the trident is most definitely the Hermes boots. I'm not sure how many people know this, but in 1.4 or 1.4.4 or 1.4.1, the trident got a rework allowing it to increase your mobility when you're underwater, which is pretty awesome on its own, but there is one other feature I discovered with it. Let's go, Star Fury and Fledgling Wings. But anyways, holding the trident with the inner tube equipped will give you the flipper effect. For no reason, I'm not even sure why, but I'll happily take it. But as soon as you stop holding the trident, the inner tube kicks back into effect and you start floating up. I spent a little bit more time exploring the left side of the world as I was heading that way anyways. We found a dungeon which signifies that there is the sulphurous sea nearby. Yeah, I don't know what's up with Calamity's backgrounds. In fact, it would be pretty nice if the whole world was that way. Any modding people, hit me up in the comments. Oh yeah, another feature that you're not really meant to discover, the sulphurous poisoning debuff applies everywhere in the sulphurous sea. No matter what pool of liquid you're swimming in, it will affect you. I plonked down a chest and did the sort things out later strategy from my stealth only series. Shout out to you if you watched that. In fact, no, who hasn't watched that at this point? Thank you so much for 20,000 views. You guys really are awesome. I went all the way to the right side of the world to discover the ocean. Actually pretty interesting how it looks when the entire world is flooded with water. After almost dying, we found ourselves another trident. Then we got hit by this fish, I forgot to quick heal, and the debuff finished us off. Not really at the top of my game here, am I? Well, let's just forget about that. I constructed a house for my NPCs who can also breathe underwater. I'm not even gonna question how that housing is even livable. Anyways, I went to explore the underground desert. Hopefully we could find some life crystals, possibly even a magic conch, and maybe even take down our first boss of this playthrough. I am pretty sure the obvious choice in this challenge would be the Desert Scourge. With his defeat, we'd be able to craft the Victide armor, which would grant us a plethora of underwater boosts, including heavily increased mobility. Not to mention all of the accessory and weapon upgrades too. Anyways, we found a lone Crimson Otter, so we crafted the Desert Medallion, although we're definitely not prepared to fight the Scourge as we are now. The Star Fury wouldn't be a bad weapon to take down a Scourge, but our mobility was complete dog shit. We was gonna have to come up with something pretty unique to take on the Scourge. Oh, would you look at that, we found the sunken sea. Let's go. Anyways, it was back to banging our heads against the drawing board. How about we dip our toes in and see what we're actually dealing with here? Well, we're definitely not fast enough, that's for sure. We can just about outpace him with the inner tube, but we still don't have the agility to actually dodge his charges. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, we made some iron armor. For the sake of our convenience, I decided to build some more houses so we could obtain pylons. However, this is when I also remembered NPCs will not move into underwater houses. Yeah, I wonder why. I came up with a pretty easy solution to this though. We just craft an insta house and boom, there we go. I made a total of 3 houses just to be sure that NPCs would actually move in, and after not too long, we could confirm that it actually works. I was on my way to the desert when this happened, so that gave me some peace of mind. So I'd baked up a little strategy for the Desert Scourge, something I'd actually tested before, so I can confirm it works. You construct a perfectly horizontal minecart track, probably about half the length of the desert. Oh yeah, and keep in mind I tested this outside of water, as minecarts will obviously move a lot slower underwater. Anyways, here goes the first attempt. To my surprise, we actually got him down to half of his HP. As you can probably tell, the main gist of this strategy is to completely face tank him and use the minecart to deal damage. So 180 max HP just wasn't going to cut it anymore. It was time for a gearing up montage. Pretty nice Crabulon arena right here. And some Hermes boots too, it's about time. I decided that since we were so deep underground now, we could obtain the cavern pylon. So I once again performed method insta house, threw the guide and merchant in there, and bought the mushroom pylon. I forgot that thing even existed, not gonna lie. Now we were making some serious progress. I found an air pocket near the surface of the desert, so I set up yet another pylon. And I thought while we're at it, we may as well get the sunken pylon. I moved in the good old guide and merchant, but unfortunately it wasn't nighttime, so while I waited, I decided we'd go explore for a bit. We'd finally maxed out on life crystals, and we also gathered up some gems to make the magic storage as well. Before we knew it, night had fallen upon us and we bought the sunken pylon, bringing us up to a total of 4 pylons now. Yeah, just ignore my abysmal organization skills. Now that I had the full 400 maximum HP, there's no way the Desert Scourge isn't getting completely obliterated. I'd gathered up 2 extra life crystals while I was in the sunken sea, so I crafted them both into heart lanterns. I placed down the heart lantern, and you may be wondering, how are you going to put a campfire there? Well, my shig, all you have to do is place some blocks, save and exit, and once you reload, you'll be able to create an air pocket. Saves getting the super absorbent sponge, but it takes a while though. Anyways, now for the main event, I summon in the Desert Scourge. I do take a considerable amount of damage in the first phase, but we should be fine. Yeah, looks like we need to upgrade ourselves even further. I went to the underground desert to hunt for the Bass statue. The extra 5 defense it provides may not be much, but we're gonna need any boost we can obtain. I'll admit I could have used an iron skin potion as well, but I didn't actually have any on me at the time. With the statue placed down, I equipped my defensive accessories and summoned in the boss once again. And this time, he aligned himself in the perfect way for us to hit all of his segments. Once again, the same thing happens with the desert nuisances. Okay, the main Scourge returns, let's hope we can get lucky. Well, I can't say I was expecting that. We'd finally taken down our first boss in this challenge, and this is going to be the most important boss. With the defeat of the Scourge, we can craft the Victide armor, allowing us to essentially move at normal speed underwater, pretty much making the Trident obsolete. There was an accessory that would synergize well with the Victide armor, but we were going to need some more sea remains. Although we could move very fast with the Victide armor, we still wasn't agile enough to actually dodge the worms. So I guess it's back to the minecart method. This has got to be one of the most satisfying things you can do in this mod. And yeah, we don't talk about how close I was to dying here. With our extra sea remains, I crafted the Great Bay pickaxe, and more importantly, the Shield of the Ocean, granting us the following effects when combined with Victide armor. Due to the Victide armor set giving us increased defense while underwater, we had a total of 36, allowing us to completely face tank the Desert Scourge. From that attempt, we got the Scourge of the Desert, which if you remember my stealth only series, you'll know exactly how good that thing is. I was feeling pretty powerful at this point, so you can probably guess what we did next. Just gotta wait a couple minutes, and there we go. Yep, we were totally ready for the Eye of Cthulhu. There was one slight issue though. I couldn't see a thing, and we had no shine potions left. So I ran all the way to the desert and threw down at least 100 glow sticks. It ain't much, but it's about all I've got. My main source of damage right now was throwing the Scourge directly underneath me and allowing it to charge right into the Eye of Cthulhu. By no means was it the greatest damage, but it was easy and consistent. And our 36 defense pretty much nullified any hit from this boss. I remembered I was using the melee helmet, but I was using a rogue weapon, so I wanted that extra damage, you know. I went to go craft the rogue helmet in the middle of the fight. Not particularly the greatest move, but what can you do? I tested out the stealth track for a bit. But considering we was in the early game and we hadn't geared towards stealth yet, the spam attack was miles better, especially with the Eye's reduced defense in his second phase. Before we knew it, we'd actually taken him out, and from his treasure bag we would obtain some inventory filler and the Shield of Cthulhu. It feels incredible finally being able to dash. Okay, so with that mini boss rush out the way, we could finally attend to something we'd been ignoring for a while. That being the magic storage. I alt-clicked the recipes on Recipe Browser to favorite them. If you're not doing that already, you totally should be. Then I got to exploring. Thankfully, the only items we needed were 2 emeralds and 2 sapphires, which due to some of Calamity's changes are most commonly found just above where lava spawns. My main strategy here was using the subtle light from the Scourge of the Desert to see through walls. I'd use this to locate any cave systems, mine over to them and check for gems. Before long, I did find a pretty huge vein of sapphire, but just like with my previous series, the emeralds were taking absolutely forever to find. I wish I was joking when I say this, we found 10 life crystals but no emeralds. Okay, that's gotta be like the 4th glowing mushroom biome we've wait, hold on a minute. Emeralds! We found emeralds! Yes indeed, we had finally located some emeralds, but I still wanted to check out this mushroom biome. Unfortunately, there wasn't anything too great in there, so I decided to call it a day in the mines. Although, while I was underground, I saw a notification for the acid rain, so I thought, may as well take advantage of it. I set up my insta houses while getting utterly bombarded by fish. Since the sulfuric poisoning debuff affects us no matter where we are in a sulfurous sea, I had to resort to a strategy of going in for about 5 seconds and going back out and going back in. Well, at least we got the pylon though. There is actually an item that gets rid of the sulfuric poisoning, but of course you need acid rain materials to obtain it. Fish. Well, we got the acid rain to 86%, that's good enough, let's make the magic storage. I put down the crafting interface and the storage heart, put down the storage units, and now we'd finally made it to the later part of the sort it out later strategy. And there we go, everything is just miles better now. I saw that we could make some crimson storage upgrades, but we didn't have enough crimtane bars to make all 10 of them. Yeah, guess what we're doing next? Were we ready for the Brain of Cthulhu? Probably not. Did I feel ready? Yes, I did. Right from the get-go, I noticed the projectiles the creepers shoot moved a lot slower. I'm not sure if it was just placebo, but it sure did make the fight feel a lot more awkward, and I was taking some very heavy damage. I locked in though, and eventually some of the creepers started to fall, the hearts dropping from them being just enough to sustain me. Although the knockback from taking damage would severely mess up my rhythm. Okay, now it's time for the second phase. Things shouldn't be too bad from here on out. My Scourge of the Desert would... Buddy, I don't think you're meant to make that sound. My Scourge of the Desert would pass through blocks and lock onto him no matter where he was, making this the absolute perfect weapon for this fight. The floatiness of being underwater did make dodging slightly awkward, but it was nothing too severe. Believe it or not, I thought the final phase was actually easier than the first, and without too much trouble, we took him out. From the treasure bag, the only thing of note we got was the crimtane bars and tissue samples. Not realizing that a meteor had already landed, I went to sleep and got punished with a goblin army. Fantastic. As you probably would have guessed, the goblin army was nothing special in this world. Okay, now to find the crash site. The map made it absolutely no secret where the meteor landed. I pulled up in person and ore excavated the entire thing. Now for the one and only reason I wanted meteorite bars, the Meteor Fist, the rogue weapon that absolutely carried the first part of my stealth only series. But will the spam attack suffice? I don't know, let's find out. For this series I picked a Crimson world, as I usually find the 2 evil bosses easier than the corruption variants. If you've watched my double bosses series though, you will know that fighting the hive mind underwater gives a heavy advantage. A fact that I'd forgotten at the time. Nothing much I can do now though. The decreased agility of being underwater definitely gave me a hard time with the worms, as they were not affected by it in the slightest. The hive is actually fairly easy to dodge though, considering its projectiles are slowed down in water. It's just the worms that are like, f*** you. I'll admit, the Meteor Fist stealth strike was much better than the spam attack, and if I'd geared into stealth at this point, I might have completely shredded the boss. However, we had no Goblin Tinkerer yet, so there wasn't too much we could do in terms of build. Okay, now for the heftiest worm in this fight, and probably the hardest as well. Getting caught once by this thing would result in a chain of hits, making every little mistake much more punishing and resulting in our death. What we needed right now was more mobility, so I decided to go for some flipper potions. In my playthroughs, I don't use the AlchemistNPC to buy potions. I think that's pretty much cheating. But one thing I do consider fair is unlimited potions at 30 stack. Once you've made 30 of a specific potion, you've done all the hard work. After that, it's only going to be an inconvenience to you and just take up time. There are people like Chief Logan who are complete Calamity purists and will use pretty much no quality of life mods, which I heavily respect. But at the same time, you need to strike up a good balance, and most importantly, do what's fun and convenient for you. I personally don't like to use too many quality of life mods, as it makes the game feel more convoluted, easy, and overall detracts from the quality of my videos. But at the same time, the whole 30 potion infinite stack thing is just a necessity. Anyways, to get these potions, we were going to need Shiverthorn and Waterleaf. Shiverthorn doesn't grow underwater, so we were going to need to make a completely dry farm for it, which would be pretty easy with the super absorbent sponge, right? But for that, we were going to need to find the angler and do a bunch of quests. I came to the ocean to hunt him down, but I quickly realized he's not going to spawn underwater, is he? If you're a seasoned Calamity veteran though, you will know that there are alternate methods of obtaining him. We'll just sit here and wait for him. With the sulfuric scales we got from the acid rain event, I crafted the Effigy of Decay, which removes the sulfuric poisoning debuff. So now all we have to do is wait here for a specific enemy, and what do you know, perfect timing. If the angler isn't currently present in your world, killing a trasher will spawn him in, for whatever reason. But if you let the angler get eaten again by another trasher, he'll drop the golden fishing rod. Sadly though, I was using a mod that makes NPCs invincible. I promptly disabled that mod, reloaded into my world. I don't think I've mentioned yet, it takes like a whole minute for my world to load. After, I kid you not, an entire 20 minutes of trying to get this thing to spawn, I gave up. In that amount of time, we could have done at least half the quests we needed. While waiting for nighttime for the angler to move back in, I set up the jungle and snow pylons. However, I noticed somewhat of a major issue. Bait does not spawn underwater. No worms, no grasshoppers, no grubbies, buggies or sluggies. Fortunately, from wooden chests, you can obtain a can of worms, giving you just enough bait to get yourself started on quests. But in our main world, we hadn't found a single one. So I made a new world, and there we go, can of worms obtained. It was now time to catch our first quest fish, the slime fish. But how are we going to fish with our entire world underwater, you ask? We'll just have to make ourselves an air pocket. I use empty buckets to drain out the water, and there we go. I found a fiberglass fishing pole while exploring in the jungle, so we was already pretty well off. The Calamity Mod reworks the angler's rewards by granting a list of rewards depending on the number of quests you've done, with number 1 granting you the spadefish, number 30 being the golden fishing rod, and number 16 being the super absorbent sponge. Yeah, don't worry, I'm not going to make you sit through all of these, let's just skip ahead. The angler's second quest reward actually gives you stuffed fish. I forgot about this at the time, but they are pretty much herb bags, giving us an incredible head start on our farming. I don't think I've ever seen anyone do this in Terraria before. I'd like to mention real quick that stuffed fish can be obtained from fishing in the surface during the daytime, but the rate at which you get them is so slow that farming would be better anyways. So after a grand total of 15 quests, I turned in the 16th and obtained the super absorbent sponge. Now we can really get things started. Having only made a herb farm once in Terraria, and multiple years ago, I didn't really have a clue of where to start. I excavated a nice large space, put down some snow blocks, I'm sure all of you watching are probably screaming internally. I planted all of my Shiverthorn seeds, waited 5 in-game days, and nothing. I was completely oblivious as to what I was doing wrong at this point. After a quick gander on the wiki, I saw that any plant can grow in any type of planter box. So I thought to myself, why don't we just use all blinkroot ones? There's no better way to kill time on the Blood Moon than to fight Crabulon. He wasn't very hard. In fact, he was very easy. The water pretty much made him float. It was an incredible sight to behold. Either way, I got my rage upgrade, so I was happy. I thought to myself, maybe if I get rid of the background walls, these plants will actually grow. I didn't realize at the time, but in the planter boxes, there was already some blinkroot and daybloom that were blooming. Daybloom. Eventually I caught on and harvested them, with the staff of regrowth of course. Now this is where the fun begins. You can obtain multiple seeds from a single herb, which means that given enough space, your farm will exponentially grow. It was time for us to expand this operation, although it was kind of annoying having to run back into the water every 20 seconds. This is the part that makes everything worth it though. And there we go, our ultimate farm is complete. Now all that's left to do is sleep, harvest, and replant our seeds until we have enough materials. With the daybloom we had, I finally did something you've all been waiting for. We crafted a full stack of shine potions. No longer is our world shrouded in darkness. I also made a full stack of iron skin potions, then some mining potions. I had enough daybloom to make swiftness potions, but I didn't have any cactus. Luckily I found this neat little trick in the comments section of a Chief Logan video. I used a guide on the Calamity Mod Discord server to locate the shimmer with pinpoint accuracy. Slight issue though. There's a bit of water. Worry not though, this is where my epic gamer plan comes into fruition. We were going to obtain the Goblin Tinkerer, obtain the Shimmer upgrades, and Cactus all at the same time. The first thing I did was enclose the Shimmer into its own dedicated space. Then I'd even out the surface and get to blasting away. For such a large volume of water, the super absorbent sponge just wasn't going to cut it. Oh yeah, can't forget a pylon either. After excavating that giant hole, I quit the game and reloaded so all the water would settle. I'll go back to the Shimmer and... okay, we're nearly there. One more giant hole and a bit of cleanup later, and we have our perfectly dry Shimmer. Let's get the upgrades first. We'll use the Vital Crystal, Arcane Crystal, Galaxy Pearl, and Ambrosia. I take a Shadow Candle with me to increase the spawn rate of the Goblin, and would you look at that, he's already here. Now to get these Swiftness Potions. I'm not sure how anyone would expect pumpkins to shimmer into cactus, but we're just going to accept it. And there we go, there's our full stack. Now back to focusing on the farming, we still needed those flipper potions. Since we had the Tinkerer now, I upgraded my Hermes boots into Frostbark boots. And of course reforged my accessories and weapons. We were so close now. While waiting for the herbs to grow, I decided I'd finish all 30 fishing quests, as the 24th quest grants the superheated blood, something we'll be needing later. Allow me to demonstrate the capabilities of this thing. Due to how overpowered this thing is, I am not going to be using this on any bosses, except the Wall of Flesh. Because trust me, if I did use it on bosses, this run would be an absolute joke. Anyways, now we can finally achieve our ultimate goal, 30 flipper potions. The agility bonus unfortunately doesn't stack with the Victide armor, but we still get infinite flight from these. Now, allow me to demonstrate why we won't be using the shark mount on bosses. Need I say more? As funny as it looks, the run would be an absolute joke if we did, so we're going to play normally. With our accessory and weapon upgrades, not to mention all the potion buffs we got, I believe we are more than ready to take on the perforators. The flipper effect on the flipper potion was just absolutely crucial at helping. Oh, the game's frozen again, okay. Oh, come on, you're nearly there. The enemy ascended beyond your oh, okay, we're back, let's go. As I was saying, the flipper effect was a great help in this fight. We made it back to the final worm phase, this time no longer being limited by the ground, we had much more control over our movement. As you can probably guess, we took down the final worm with ease, leaving us with just a hive. The only obstacle in my way now was my poor aim. But yeah, the perforators really were no match for us. Seeing as how that very one-sided fight went, I thought it would be a good idea to challenge Skeletron. So with the aerialite ore we mined, I crafted the Turbulence, the all-powerful, the almighty tracking disc. And then with nothing much else to do at this point, we summoned in Skeletron. As per usual, the tracking disc does a stellar job at taking out all the hands. And also, Skeletron's homing skulls were slowed down underwater. Oh no, how am I gonna dodge this? With Skeletron's hands gone, I used the Turbulence as it had a much better single target DPS. His hands respawned, I took them out once again, and I proceeded to melt the entirety of the second phase. It's actually pretty funny seeing how slow his skulls are in the final phase. This right here is the death mode experience. Anyways, we took him down, granting us access to the dungeon and the abyss chests. But before all of that though, there was one accessory we could obtain now, the aquatic heart, dropping from the question mark enemy in the ocean. However, after a few minutes of waiting, I just couldn't get one to spawn. So I thought we'd go straight to Slime God instead, that way we can obtain Zerg potions as well. It took us a while to find some blight slimes, but eventually they'd come around. And with the blighted gel dropped from them, we crafted the overloaded sludge and summoned in the Slime God. Once again, the Slime God was one of those bosses that just aren't very accustomed to the water, making it very easy to dodge. Not gonna lie shigs, I thought this challenge would be harder. Maybe it gets harder, who knows. Anyways, my main weapon of choice for this fight was the Turbulence. You simply cannot go wrong with it. Before long, we'd split both of the Slime Gods into their second phase. The flying slime balls were kind of awkward to dodge, but that was about the only difficult part of this fight. We'd just take out the slimes one by one, slowly but surely, until eventually, the Slime God was defeated. We took our adrenaline upgrade and got straight to crafting. To make these Zerg potions, we were going to need an alchemy table from the dungeon. So while I hunted for that, I picked up pretty much everything else I could find too. And before long, we'd eventually stumble upon one and craft our potions. Now we wait. This thing does have a 25% drop chance, so this could take a short while. Plus the fact that every time we do kill one, we're gonna have to run for our lives. You reckon the Turbulence is viable on this boss? Okay, second one located and perfect. The aquatic heart turns you into— hold on, looks like we've got some company. The aquatic heart turns you into a water elemental, granting you vastly improved water mobility and movement speed in general, inflicting enemies with glacial state when you get hit, and an ice shield which absorbs 20% of enemy damage, with a cooldown of 30 seconds. Now, this is where we face somewhat of a dilemma in this challenge. As you can very clearly see, there is no water in the underworld, so what exactly are we gonna do? Well, the superheated blood we got earlier lets us swim completely unscathed in lava. Let me explain my logic real quick, I hope this makes sense. So obviously we're gonna assume our Terrarian can hold their breath outside of water, just like a human can hold their breath inside of water. But obviously we're not gonna be able to take out the wall of flesh in a single breath, which is where the lava shark comes in, allowing us to survive in lava for whatever reason. By that logic, we can assume the Terrarian becomes one with the shark, and this shark clearly has no problem traversing lava, which leaves us no other choice than to fight the wall of flesh entirely submerged in lava. Let's also add another thing to what I said earlier. The obsidian skin potion also grants us obsidian lungs, allowing us to breathe lava. Yeah, this is getting far-fetched now, but it's the only option we have. I used the Onyx Excavator to dig a tunnel through the entire underworld. This is actually pretty satisfying. Okay, that should be good enough. All balls, no brain, let's get this party started. There aren't many pre-hard mode weapons that can phase through blocks, but I know for a fact that the Scourge of the Desert is one of them. It may be slow, but as far as I knew at the time, it was the best option we had. Slight issue though. The lava wasn't doing its thing. I think we're gonna have to save and exit to make it settle. There we go, problem solved. After some research on the wiki, I crafted the Enchanted Axe, a rogue weapon that just so happens to go through walls and home in on enemies. Then I dived into the Abyss in search of the Herring Staff. It's kind of funny how the Abyss is pretty much our natural habitat at this point. Anyways, we got the Enchanted Axe and Herring Staff, so let's get straight to the Wall of Flesh. Although being a single target weapon, the Enchanted Axe was doing a pretty flawless locking onto the Wall of Flesh's eye. I'm not exactly sure where the herrings had wandered off to though. Our damage was pretty awful, but we weren't getting hit too much though. But we'd forgotten to bring an obsidian skin potion. Yeah, we could have used an obsidian shield as well. So the Hellstone ore was slowly chipping away at our health. It was somewhat avoidable by staying in the exact center of our tunnel, but that was tricky to do. And eventually we would be reduced to charcoal. Yeah, there we go, got my obsidian skin potion this time, let's go. Once again, our damage was abysmal, but we were practically never getting hit. The only thing that could stop us now was running out of tunnel. See, we were so close to— oh no. Okay, let's try something new. Maybe we could make the Statagel Summoner Armor and use a Summoner loadout, as I do remember the Herring Staff being very effective against the Wall of Flesh. New drip obtained. For this loadout, we weren't going to be needing any movement accessories, as the Shark provided all of that. And in terms of defense, we were practically never getting hit, so it was all damage we needed. I made the Spirit Glyph, took down some Ghost Bells for the Voltaic Jelly, crafted that into the Jelly Charged Battery, and put on the Abyssal Amulet I got earlier from fishing. I held my breath and obtained another Guide Voodoo Doll. I think we're ready now. I made sure to right click the wall's eye so the herrings would focus on that and only that. And with that one simple change, our damage went from complete dog to incredible. Wake up babe, new wall of flesh cheese just dropped. As funny as this was, this had to be the most mundane wall of flesh fight I've ever done. Can't say it didn't work though. Even his scary final phase wasn't a threat in the slightest. And to my surprise, our goofy plan actually worked. It was now time to move on to bigger and better things. So we have finally entered hard mode. With a myriad of new options open to us, the first thing we did was go to the Sunken Sea. A place where you can obtain some incredible weaponry by literally killing a couple enemies. Take this eutrophic scimitar that we got not 5 seconds ago. It is a great weapon and all, but I felt like pivoting to ranged. While in early hard mode, range definitely isn't the best option. After you kill a mech boss or two is when it really comes into its own. I found the Astral Infection, crafted a bullet-filled shotgun, moved the arms dealer in, and we bought the P90. Not particularly the greatest option, but man if this thing isn't fun to use. Pretty much any insanely fast weapon is just amazing. Anyways, the reason we're in the Sunken Sea is to fight the upgraded giant clam. With the defeat of the Wall of Flesh, it now has more health and some new attacks, but drops much better loot. This is gonna take a while. The giant clam now drops mollusk husks, which can be crafted into new rogue weapons and a possible new set of armor. Plus a very serviceable range weapon that drops directly from him, although we didn't get it this time. First off, I crafted the mollusk armor, which I do remember granting some underwater mobility. However, the horizontal speed decrease is just too much. I have combined the chest plate and leggings with other helmets before, but to be honest, that's only really viable on no hits. So I switched back to the Statagel armor. After quickly mining some cobalt and palladium, I make the Deep Diver, a ram dashing accessory which grants increased underwater mobility. Literally the perfect accessory for this run. Then I buy the fin wings from the merchant. I'm not sure what mod adds those to the merchant's shop, but these can also be obtained by doing fishing quests in hard mode. And once again, these also increase our water mobility. Okay, last upgrade I'm gonna make, I promise. If you watch my stealth only series, you'll know that the Wave Skipper's stealth strike is incredibly overpowered. So I thought we'd test out the spam attack and see how well that holds up. Turns out, it's just as good. This thing was dealing multiple thousands of DPS. It wasn't exactly on the same power level as a stealth strike, but it was very close. And by no means was I using a DPS build. To be honest, I might just stick to rogue at this point. Not before I stick my face into one of these evil looking cloud things. But we move though, that was just a mistake, we can kill this guy. He is the aquatic scourge, but I'm pretty much the king of the sea at this point. And we take him down with only a slight challenge. Netting ourselves the Baronautical, not what I was hoping for. But more importantly, the aquatic emblem. An underwater based accessory which grants 50 defense. At the cost of, drumroll please, 10% movement speed. So we essentially get a 350 defense, which is more than the Draiden's Heart, might I add. At this point, man, I was really feeling like playing ranged, but I just didn't have any good weapons at this point. We needed to kill a mech boss. The Baronautical just doesn't hold up. I gave the giant clam a couple more attempts to see if we could get the clamor rifle. The clam went down without any trouble obviously, and there we go. I tried the Scourge again for the sea searing, but I'm not doing this fight another 20 times. Well, it was time for the obligatory early hard mode Soul of Night and Soul of Light grind. I head to my local underground Crimson and pop a Zerg, but we were only getting jellyfish. I'm not complaining, they still drop souls, but this was a sight to behold. There is so many of them, what is actually— Oh yeah, by the way, we'll still be able to get lots of Ichor, as the Perforators actually drop Ichor in hard mode. Okay, moving on to the Hallow, except Queen Slime actually drops Souls of Light, so we'll just fight her instead. As with every other slime boss underwater, she moves so comically slowly, it's incredible. Is this what playing journey mode's like? Okay, she's in her second phase and now she's starting to take off, and she can fly so fast, yet falls at like 2 miles per hour. So it's needless to say that this was basically a free win. Now on to more important things. All balls, no brain, we are fighting a destroyer. You saw how quickly the Wave Skipper turned the Aquatic Scourge into a pot noodle, so we were going to do the same thing for the Destroyer, which would grant us access to tier 2 hard mode ores and Souls of Might. Hopefully the Mega Shark is a good enough weapon to warrant us switching to ranged. Anyway, status update on the Destroyer fight, the lasers were pretty heavily slowed down, which made them somewhat easier to dodge. We were actually pretty agile now considering all the water mobility buffs we had, plus the infinite flight from the flipper effect. We were rapidly approaching the Destroyer's second phase though, which is when things could take a turn for the worst. Although, so far I had a hopeful outlook on this fight. We was on full HP and the Destroyer was getting closer and closer to turning into scrap. He'd give his absolute best effort to eat us, but we was just too cracked. Our game freezes for a second and we take him down. It is time to use these Souls of Might. But first of all though, I mined some Mithril and craft the Mithril Ranger set. I then upgrade my Brain of Confusion into the Amalgamated Brain as I forgot to do that earlier. Then I take a couple serviceable ranged weapons until we can get the Mega Shark. Now we actually get a chance to try the Clamor Rifle we got earlier, and it's not half bad of a weapon, especially being homing and all. Also, I bought the Spiteful Candle and Rod of Discord from the Wizard. After totally not purchasing some shark fins from a modded NPC, we craft the Mega Shark. A very solid weapon in Vanilla and Calamity alike. This weapon has never not been viable since it was added. Anyways, did you hear someone say boss rushed? Because I sure did. It was time to forcefully feed the twins some lead. To be more specific, I call bullets. Anyways, like with the majority of the boss fights we've done so far, the water has made them considerably easier. I sure do hope this challenge gets harder later on. As always, Spasmatism gets to his second phase before Retinator, but before long we turn both of them. Now this is where the fun stuff begins. I don't think these lasers are lasering. Spasmatism was fairly easily dodged by alternating between falling and jumping. He'd get a couple cheeky hits in if we had a bad cycle, but for the most part we was doing great. Now for his final phase where he tries to grab you from underneath. Luckily this was very easily dodged by doing the same strategy as before. Moving on to Retinator, the absolute barrage of lasers he fires are heavily slowed down, but the homing ones do maintain most of their speed. This repeated for another few cycles as we gunned him down with the Mega Shark, and before too long, he was defeated. Souls of Sight obtained. Now we could go and mine the tier 3 hard mode ores, but I honestly think we're ready for Skelly Prime. What I was hoping for here is that his skulls and lasers would be slowed down due to the water, making him significantly easier. Let's just say I think I was right. I was genuinely hoping for a challenge, but this is easy. I'll admit the Mega Shark did take quite a while getting rid of his arms, but we're here now and that's what matters. Okay, here comes the homing skulls. Let's see. They are so much slower, wow. You see, this is what they should actually be like. Because like this, and also in Revengeance, they're actually possible to dodge simultaneously with the lasers, without just cheesing the boss. Yeah, I really hope they rework this guy in the next update. Anyways, the fight is going smooth as ever. He's now moved on to shooting his homing rockets, but once again they get slowed down in the water. Although the one issue with that is that there's now a giant wall of them chasing me. And this was quickly turning into a very close fight, considering we had a whole 45 seconds left on a hill. We can't let him take us out now though, we just gotta run for our lives. And believe it or not, we'd taken out all 3 mechanical bosses pretty much back to back. If I'm being honest, I was kind of flabbergasted at this point. If my mic sounds any different, hopefully it sounds better, I changed some settings. Anyways, we needed to fight Cryogen. For that, we needed to gather some Essence of Helium, but wait, hold on, you're going too fast. Why are we fighting Cryogen? Well, Cryogen spawns Cryonic Ore in the underground snow biome, and we were going to need to mine Cryonic Ore at some point. While the upgrades you can get from it at this point of the game probably won't be that useful to us, we can make life alloys later on. Anyways, Cryogen, one of my favourite bosses in the entire mod. Just like Skeletron Prime, all of his projectiles are slowed down, making it kind of funny, and also making his attacks very easy to dodge. We got him to his final phase with absolutely no issue. The Mega Shark was kind of hard to aim at times, but it was nothing too serious. Before long, we pop Cryogen, out comes the Archmage, and the ice caves are now crackling with frigid energy, which means mining time. I forgot to bring a Spelunker potion, but luckily Cryonic Ore has a natural glow to it, so we could spot it pretty easily. I had a look at the recipes, but there really wasn't anything we could make right now. The Ornate Shield possibly, but the Deep Diver does the exact same thing. With the hallowed bars we got from killing all 3 mechs, I made the Pickaxe Axe, mined up some Chlorophyte in the jungle, held my breath and got some Essences of Chaos, crafted the Eye of Desolation and summoned in the cow. I'll be honest, for Ranger at least, there really wasn't much preparation we could actually do. The Mega Shark was a more than viable weapon on Cow herself, and for the brothers I used the Chlorophyte Shotbow with Cinder Arrows. Okay, time for the first bullet hell. The projectiles as far as I can see don't actually get slowed down by water, but the infinite flight makes them a breeze to dodge. Although there is a slight lack of precision when dodging, especially with the flipper effect, the scarcity of the projectiles lets us get through perfectly fine. As always, the second phase is easy, but here comes the brothers. This is where our lack of agility might come back to bite us, but the Chlorophyte Shotbow was doing amazing. Well, wouldn't say amazing, but it's the best we've got right now. We were getting hurt pretty badly though. But don't worry, we're good at the game, so we pass on to the next phase. Cal now spawns in a bunch of soul seekers who circle her, and starts shooting even more projectiles, especially when she dashes. But my chlorophyte shotbow says nah, and we move on to the final bullet hell. This time with the circular brimstone projectiles. They can catch you very off guard if you're close to them, but as long as you stay a safe distance away, you'll be fine. Except if you take stupid hits like I did. Now for her final and by far easiest phase, you literally move in a straight line and dash. Hooray, we did it. We open up our treasure bag, but the treasure bag wasn't what I was after. The Havoc's breath is a flamethrower that drops from the brothers, and would you look at that, we already got it. Must have dropped from our first attempt then, because I had no idea it was there. That's cool and all, but there was another ranged weapon we can get from the treasure bag, the Animosity. We didn't get it. No worries, we'll just try again. Why am I reforging my Havoc's breath in the middle? What am I doing? Well, next time's the charm and oh my goodness. Alright, it just wasn't our day today. I thought that maybe this session we could try something new and go for Plantera. I found the Vernal Pass, aka the free Plantera arena. There's no bulbs. Of all the ways you could just make my life harder, well, I guess we've got to craft a porter bulb now. I got forced home by an anglerfish so I could craft it. Turns out, I'm missing some trapper bulbs. Not to worry, I'll just go and farm some now. They don't spawn underwater. I was at the point of the night where I'm too lazy to build a teleporter setup or any arenas for that matter, but there's just enough dopamine floating around that makes me want to find the next boss. I found a pool of water with a pretty huge air pocket nearby, so I stuck around to see if I could find any angry trappers. Trapper bulb obtained. Now with the porter bulb in my hands, I rushed back to the arena and summoned in Plantera. To no surprise really, the plant herself wasn't actually affected by the water, but the floatiness made it slightly easier to dodge her attacks. Looking back on this now, I should have got rid of that massive blocks in the middle. I just never do it out of pure laziness, you know I never build arenas. But either way, when I was able to do damage, our Havoc's breath was putting in some numbers. I could tell already this was going to be a test of our endurance. Funnily enough though, her spiky balls are slowed down by the water, which is probably one of the most useful things that could have happened. Of course I still find a way to get hit by them. Okay, time for the second phase now, and this is where Plantera means business. The tentacles were completely trivialized by the Havoc's breath, but the walls of seeds she fires out would prove to be nearly impossible to dodge. And with an unfortunate timed dash, she took me out. Back to punching a hole in the drawing board and throwing it across the room. This is when I finally caved and got rid of all the blocks in the middle. See? It looks so much nicer now. Anyways, I summoned Plantera back in. There is some air pockets, but I'm sure they'll be filled in with some water soon enough. Let's just focus on the fight for now, shall we? I'm sure the water... What? The game froze for a couple minutes after this, giving me some time to reflect on my life decisions and why I'm even here. I think I need more than a couple minutes to process this. I save and exit the world and pinch myself, hoping that this is just a bad dream that I can wake up from. My water. All of my water. What does one even do in this situation? Wait, the jungle temple is looking kinda full. Would be a real shame if I just happened to hike into it. Me breaking the laws of physics and reality to kill a boss slightly earlier than you're intended to. Except nah, of course we're not fighting Golem yet. I just wanted a good arena for Plantera. Wouldn't say by any means good, but it's half decent. The sheer lack of volume this arena had made it somewhat easy to take stupid hits, but we got to the second phase. The boss's health went down and my heart rate went up. Even with our lack of agility, Plantera's dashes were still fairly easy to dodge, although the lack of size this arena had made it somewhat hard kiting around her. But we was on pretty much full health, we was gonna take her down. I had basically no ammo for the Havoc's breath anymore, and I really didn't want to farm any gel, so I just used the Mega Shock. It didn't deal nearly as much damage, but allowed me to get much further away from the boss. Okay, I'm a fraud, why am I actually dying to death mode Plantera? Anyways, I remembered we could make the angel tread, so I farmed the materials we needed. And yeah, looks like there's a severe lack of water in our world now. I guess I'll have to reflood it at some point. But we need to take care of Plantera first, of course. I forgot to mention I crafted the Chlorophyte armor as well, giving us significantly more defense compared to the Mithril armor, and the set bonus heavily increasing our survivability. As slow as this fight was, no, I'm not even kidding, it took like 2 minutes to get to the second phase, we were doing pretty alright for ourselves. I did decide in the end I'd use the Havoc's breath to finish her off, as there's no way I could fail this attempt. I activate Adrenaline one last time and completely melt her, finally netting us our victory against Plantera. I opened the treasure bag, granting us living shards, but there was still the problem at hand. I used a command which, upon activation, froze my game for a couple minutes. Soon after though, our world was back to being fully flooded again. Well, now that we're back in business, I thought we'd go and take a trip to the hard mode dungeon, as we were going to be needing plenty of ectoplasm for all the new recipes we could make. Due to the dungeon being entirely flooded, there were a lot of jellyfish floating about, but eventually we found the skeletons we needed. And we picked up a tactical shotgun. Okay, so the first thing on our agenda was to take on the Frost Moon. The reason being that we could obtain two brand new weapons that would basically carry us all the way up to Golem. The Snowman Cannon and the Eternal Blizzard. The Snowman Cannon being a direct drop from the Ice Queen, which we are barely taking out ever screams of this shotgun. Plus the fact that the Snowman Cannon isn't even guaranteed. But worry not, we have a safety net here. The Eternal Blizzard can be bought from the Archmage after taking out each Frost Moon mini-boss once. So we just had to get at least one kill, which we barely managed to pull off with 30 seconds to spare. Okay, it is time to test this thing. I bought some icicle bullets and hailstorm arrows, but yeah, the water really doesn't like them. I decided Plantera would be the perfect target dummy for this weapon. After all, we were going to need some more living shards, and we could have a chance at getting the Blossom Flux. With the icicle arrows, this weapon was dealing a solid 1300 DPS, however we had to stay pretty close, which is especially scary in the second phase. But the practice I've had with my Infernum playthrough was actually paying off here. We took her down fairly easily, and we didn't get the Blossom Flux. No worries, we'll just fight her again. With one solid blow to the face and my ego, I run back home crying to the Goblin Tinkerer and summoning the Frost Moon once again. This time with the living shards I got from Plantera, I crafted some sprouting arrows, which split into 2 arrows at a certain distance, however dealing slightly less damage to compensate. With our considerably better loadout, we was able to breeze through the waves much faster than before, taking out our first Ice Queen with multiple minutes to spare. Then along came the second one, and there we go, that is the weapon that will carry us all the way up to the cultist. Oh, and did I ever tell you, I have channel memberships available now? For the low price of £2 a month, you will obtain custom emojis and a badge next to your name to show your superiority compared to other viewers of my channel. And that isn't all, you'll also gain access to a members only channel in my Discord, including members only video updates. And you'll even be shouted out at the end of my videos, so become a shig today. Okay, I'm done wasting your time, I'll get back to the video. Now I could upgrade to the Asgard's Valor or the Angel Treads at this point, but I just wanted to take down some bosses, you know? So I got straight to bossing these bosses, the first of which being Anahita and Leviathan. Seeing as they are aquatic creatures, we're the only ones getting nerfed here. We're basically fighting them in their own domain. Although I've got to say, the Eternal Blizzard was completely shredding a Leviathan. I did swap to the Snowman Cannon when Anahita spawned as she is a smaller target, but I completely forgot to reforge it. Yeah, I was wondering why it was doing no damage. Anyways, now that both of them are here, they were completely tag teaming me, I was getting bullied by them. Anahita was completely trivial on her own, but when the Leviathan dashed at me, with my reduced agility and lack of Asgard's Valor, it was hard to dodge. Yeah, I really do regret not upgrading my dash here. Anyways, now with Leviathan out of the picture, the fight was basically trivial. I'd take a couple stupid hits from Anahita, nearly die at the end, but we took her out. No problem. As per usual, we don't get a ranged weapon, although I don't remember it being too incredible either. But more importantly, we can access the upgraded Abyss. I'm not even sure why Leviathan upgrades the Abyss after you kill them. In fact, no, it used to be Calclone that would upgrade the Abyss, but that makes even less sense. I had my eyes set on the Megalodon, an ever so awesome upgrade to the ever so awesome Mega Shark, requiring only some depth cells, voidstone, and the ultrafish. I also mined some planty mush so we can make some life fruits. One misclick later, I recall back home, but it turns out Jared follows you. I'm not going down without a fight though. I craft the Megalodon and immediately get to testing it. Slight issue though, the water jets have no range, so an entire half of this weapon's attacks are completely nullified. I guess that leaves us with no other choice than to face Aureus. And oh, he is a floaty boy. This caught me off guard, I didn't think he'd be floating that much. His projectiles, on the contrary, are completely unaffected, so I had to lock back in. And soon enough, I found a rhythm with his stomping attack. For the time being, I went with the Snowman Cannon. It wasn't doing as much damage as I'd expected, but it was aggressively homing into him, which is what you're looking for if you're trying to learn a boss's attacks, you know. For the most part, this fight was an absolute cruel. It was taking us forever to bite some sizable chunks off of his health, but I was charging adrenaline quite frequently. I'm not sure entirely what the breakpoints for the different phases are, but I know we was close to his final one. The phase where he starts stomping a billion times, which combined with all the other projectile spam and his floatiness really caught me off guard. And sadly, I ended up being finished off by a debuff. Let's try again. This time I used the Eternal Blizzard as I saw it was dealing more damage. And Aureus is a big boy, it's not like we need the homing. Maybe we need the homing. What we definitely needed though was more attempts. It's the floatiness of the water that's throwing me off the most, and my less than optimal dash. But at the end of the day, why would you even need better gear? Just fill in that hole with skill. It's the more difficult path, but it will increase your skill exponentially. And it's just fun to play like this. Terraria at its core is a sandbox game, not necessarily a 2D boss rushing bullet hell, but it can be that way if you want it to be. And that's Astrum Aureus. Not too hard, but not completely free either. We take the adrenaline upgrade and move on with our lives. There was nothing in particular I really wanted to craft at this point, so I decided we will move straight on to Golem. Upon arrival, I got my ass folded into some origami and handed directly to me. You ever just wonder what people would do if you could respawn in real life? Okay, we're not going to go down that existential rabbit hole, let's just fight the boss. As always, Golem is nothing too special, although his fireballs are incredibly slow. The snowman cannon made incredibly short work of the hands, and with some adrenaline, the Eternal Blizzard was completely annihilating the head. For once, the water mobility was actually really helping out here. Yeah, flight time? That's a thing of the past. Things were way too good to be true. We were completely low diffing this guy. It had to be some kind of divine intervention that would stop us. Oh wait, this is new? Is this a new death mode attack? Does Golem just freeze time? Looks like we've been hit. The enemy ascended beyond your control. Or was that all yours? I'm dead. Okay, let's try again. It appears my pylons aren't working. On top of freezing time to kill me, Golem also destroyed all of my housing. Well, at least the torches inside of them. Luckily though, I remember this absolute Giga Chad's comment, so I made some iCore torches and fixed up my housing. A few minutes later, and our pylons are back up and running. Okay, Golem, I want a fair, clean fight, no time manipulation. Well, I wouldn't say this is a fair fight exactly, but whatever. Now we got Professor Headless Chicken over here in the final phase shooting exploding bolts at me, but honestly, these are nothing. Golem fires off a few more volleys of lasers at me, but it was to no avail. We take him down. The defeat of Golem marks a milestone in our progression. We have the option to move directly to the Celestial Pillars if we take on the Cultist, or we could fight a few other bosses and maybe enhance our gear even further. But if one thing's a given, that would be mining scoria ore. I pull up to the abyss and ore excavate the living daylights out of this ore. Just straight vein mining it. I return back to my humble base and would you look at that, Ickle? I'm upgrading my health. Bet you didn't think I'd do that. Okay, anyways, I crafted all these scoria ore into bars and made the Hellstorm. A very solid and effective gun at this point. Then I made the full set of hydrothermic armor. A pretty substantial upgrade to Chlorify at this point. Now it was time to farm some plague enemies in the jungle, although I noticed a distinct lack of them spawning. I even tried looking underground, but after a few minutes, not a single one. So what I'm gathering from this is that the enemies just straight up don't spawn underwater. If there are any ways to get Plague Soul canisters before you take on the Plaguebringer, do let me know in the comments, that would actually be pretty interesting. But yeah, this does kinda suck though, I wanted to see what Plaguebringer was like. I guess the next best option we have is to fight the Ravager. Just like every other gravity affected boss, he is considerably slowed down. Although there are some of his projectiles that are entirely unaffected. The contrast between the two different speeds catching me off guard. This slimy goofy rocket has just crashed into me for no reason. It's okay. Let's try again. If you believe in yourself, and Box believes in you too, anything is possible. With the power of friendship and adrenaline, we completely shig him into his second phase, where the fight goes from spammy awkward bullet hell to run left and right simulator, and occasionally dash 2 I suppose. I found the long range and consistency of the Hellstorm to be absolutely perfect on this boss. Seriously, it's just such a good weapon. Anyways, we take him down, no sweat. I take the rage upgrade and throw the geode at the nearest brick wall. Sadly, I didn't get the range drop from Ravager, but the Realm Ravager, what it's called, isn't too good anyways. Since we didn't really have a way to fight Plaguebringer, I bought some truffle worms and we challenged the Duke instead. which we was able to spawn in with an air pocket thanks to the ever so trusty super absorbent sponge. Time to challenge the literal Duke of the Seas in his own domain. Not particularly the best idea. But hey, what could go wrong? The Hellstorm was doing some pretty immaculate damage to him. This thing even works just fine on the bubbles too. Second phase now. And if you have a keen eye, you may have noticed I still haven't upgraded my dash. What could possibly go wrong? Well, nothing as far as I can see. The timing's a bit awkward, but we can still ram dash through him. Aside from the couple of stupid hits we were taking, we were on track to completely gobble this guy up. And then, shark happened. Who in their right minds thought that was a good idea? Yeah, okay, we're making the Asgard's Valor. While I get the materials for that, let me educate you on how these water accessories actually work. Now, for the time being, I've just been slapping them all on aimlessly, expecting them to work perfectly. Which I'll admit, the loadout I've got going right now is actually pretty good in hindsight. Although, these accessories don't necessarily stack with each other in the way you'd think. I'll show you what I mean. This is us with no accessories or armor, just a flipper potion. Not agile in the slightest. Now we put on the abyssal diving suit. You can see we're more agile now, we accelerate faster and we even fall faster. Now for the aquatic hull, which states improves our underwater mobility, but the only reason we are gaining extra speed is because of the max movement speed and acceleration bar. On top of that, we can put on the deep diver, which supposedly increases water mobility, but yeah, it does nothing, it just doesn't stack. Okay, anyways, back to what we was doing. I bought some accessories from a totally not modded NPC. I mean, you wouldn't really want to watch me farming them anyways. And with those, I can make pretty much every ingredient for the Ankh Charm. Then the Ankh Shield, and ultimately the Asgard's Valor. This time, I wanted to do something new though. The Celestial Shell's water buff actually works separately from any other items, turning the Terrarian into a merman or maid or folk, as Terraria calls it, which gives us actual infinite flight instead of just infinite double jumps. We do ascend quite slowly, but believe me, it's a lot more precise than without it. Now with our ultimate loadout, we can finally die to Duke Fishron. Nah, I was just acting, there's no way we're that bad at the game. Once you get to phase 3, the fight is just an absolute breeze. Okay, maybe this just wasn't our day. With no other options here, I guess it was time for us to draw the curtains on hard mode. And in doing so, we challenged the lunatic cultist. Okay, he can't be that hard, can he? So far, things were looking smooth though. His attacks weren't affected by the water, but we was dodging through them perfectly. And the Hellstorm, which is pretty subpar for this tier, is still putting up a very good fight. As the fight progresses, the attacks do get faster and more chaotic, so I really do have to be on my toes. Especially these ancient lights he throws out. And his fireballs too. Yeah, good luck doing this in Infernum. We're getting closer and closer to taking him out. I made a pretty bad mistake here. I could have used the Rod of Discord, but I forgot. This attack though, where he shoots the Shadow Flame balls and then the Ancient Lights directly after, normally with some good full speed you can evade both of them. But we fall kinda slowly in the water. Luckily for us though, the fin wings make us fall faster. So I replaced the Celestial Shell with them, sacrificing agility and precision for a higher top speed. I get the Ancient Light attack again, I get caught in a pretty awkward place, and the debuff finishes me off. There is one other concern I had with this boss, which would be the severe lack of visibility, so I led him on over to the Sulphurous Sea. Now that I think about it, this makes a very significant difference and allows me to read the attacks much more clearly. Oddly specific comparison here, but it's kind of like when you're making music with ear fatigue versus when you're doing it fresh in the morning. You'll be making overall better choices when your ears are fresh, and you'll be able to pick out things you couldn't previously see. Like, for example, a bad EQ balance or a resonance in a certain instrument. Okay, I'll stop being a music nerd, let's get back into the fight. We were drawing closer and closer to clutching the fight when he's on like 10,000 health. Well, I have the most optimized loadout, there really is nothing I can do here except keep trying. I'd imagine you're likely all internally screaming because I haven't upgraded my life yet. But at the end of the day, who even needs to spend literally 2 minutes getting some life fruits and a couple materials when you can just do another attempt on the boss? This time around, I went for the Eternal Blizzard as a weapon choice, as fun fact, homing weapons are nerfed on the cultist. Which means I did have to focus on aiming, and stay slightly closer to the boss, but at the end of the day, it's a trade-off I was willing to make. As in this scenario, the Eternal Blizzard was completely crushing this boss. And I was fully 100% one for all full cowling locked in on this boss. There we go. With the cultist wiped out and the ancient manipulator obtained, we have set in motion the final chapter of this video. If any of you have ever seen my double bosses playthrough, or just know about me in general, you'll know exactly why I'm taking on the Nebula Pillar first. I'll give you a couple moments to think about your answer, because why would I be doing the Nebula Pillar? I'm a ranger. What benefit could there possibly be? Well, my friend, I will show you. If you haven't already figured it out, I'll show you the answer. Let's introduce the Scorpio, a direct upgrade to the Snowman Cannon, which deals significantly more damage, homes in on enemies aggressively, and you haven't seen this yet, the right-click attack. Essentially, you charge up the right-click attack by performing 3 bursts of rockets. Once it's charged, you can release the nuke, dealing multiple thousands of damage if you can land a hit. This is honestly one of my favourite weapons in the entire game, as it takes such a normally brain-dead weapon but gives it some nuance and some strategy. Also, why is this solar pillar inside a hive? Not really gonna question it, but okay. Either way, that's the second pillar done. The Stardust pillar was nothing special, it was pretty mindless. I would just float around, fire this weapon, and eventually we took down the shield. Now for the fourth and final pillar, the Vortex pillar. I'm not gonna lie, I completely forgot to fight Astromedeus. I wouldn't imagine him being too much harder underwater, but at the end of the day, there isn't too many upgrades you can get from him. Not necessarily for Ranger at least. Anyways, we nuke the Vortex pillar into oblivion, and prepare for our final challenge against the Tentacle Lord himself. We're fully equipped in terms of armor and accessories, we have the best weapon we can possibly get at this point, so the only thing left for us to do is take on the Moon Lord. The beginning of the fight plays out very similar to how it normally would do, except I'm considerably slower. Luckily for us though, our infinite flight allows us to easily dodge his death beam. The beams he shoots from his eyes do actually seem to be slowed down by the water, although that could just be me tripping. So far, this fight was seeming too good to be true. How could I be completely demolishing him? Our damage wasn't incredible due to our lack of DPS accessories, but we were still getting by perfectly fine. I even saved up some adrenaline, which I used to completely melt through his health bar. Okay, here's where things get real now the cores finally open itself up. All 3 tries of Cthulhu are out to get us now. But remember, the boss can't kill you if you kill it first. All we had to do was drop its health to 0 before it drops our health to 0. Which is easier said than done, but we have the power of friendship on our side. Seriously, if Box believes in you, anything is possible. The Moon Lord spams attacks at me like there's no tomorrow, but I reciprocate. I'll fire absolutely everything I have at this boss. And once again, the Scorpio remains undefeated. Why is his eye still there? But bugs aside, what matters is that we won. Now that we're officially in post-Moon Lord progression, this is where things really get interesting. We should probably start by opening up our Moon Lord treasure bag, from which we get our 7th accessory slot from the Celestial Onion, and a whole bunch of nothing. Wait no, there's Luminite too, okay. I craft my Luminite into bars and waste all of them on a solar pickaxe. You're probably wondering why? Allow me to show you. Nearly 1,000 Luminite ore later, we craft ourselves the Vortex armor, as we were going to be sticking to Ranger. I then make the Deadshot Brooch to fill in my empty accessory slot, for now at least. Using all the Luminite we have, I upgrade my Rocket Freeze into mini nukes. Trust me, things are going to get interesting soon enough, once we get the ball rolling with these post-Moon Lord upgrades. Anyways, I went to challenge the Moon Lord again, as I wanted to get my hands on an SDMG. I mean, it kind of fits the theme in this playthrough. Our new Vortex armor should make obtaining this thing pretty easy. So, setting aside the goal of the SDMG, I wanted to craft a different weapon to bridge the gap between us and the Moon Lord, even though we've already taken down the Moon Lord. The Planetary Annihilation being the bow I had my eyes set on, an upgrade to the Vernal Bolter. Now, I'm not really a bow kind of guy, but converts wooden arrows into homing energy bolts? Can't really go wrong with that now, can we? And good lord, this thing's like an RGB beefed up Daedalus Stormbow. Is this what love feels like? I'm honestly so grateful we took a chance on this weapon now. I have a feeling this thing's gonna be our friend for many bosses to come. I resummoned in the Moon Lord and yeah, he didn't stand a single chance. We opened our treasure bag and no SDMG. That's fine, we'll just open another. Still no SDMG. But I'll take that Celebration Mark II though. Okay, maybe I'm just having bad luck. No, he drops like 7 items each death, and not a single one of them is the SDMG. You can probably guess what we didn't get from the treasure bag. I was fed up of fighting Moon Lord at this point, so I went to a totally not modded NPC and bought some treasure bags. Okay, second one, third one, fourth, fifth. Oh, okay, fifth. That was nearly 10 treasure bags to obtain one weapon. What are the chances? Yeah, anyways, we needed to obtain some unholy essence, so I went to the underworld, put on the lava shark mount, and went to work. I'd hide under lava for the most part, wait for an enemy to come out, and then dive back out and grab the loot. Took about 10 minutes to get everything we needed, but things weren't too bad. I made a full stack of holy fire bullets, as the wiki said they were pretty decent. Then of course I made the profane shard. Now it is finally time for us to move on to the first boss, the chicken balls. My first instinct was to use the Celebration Mark II as the huge blast radius could hit everything, but the range was pretty abysmal, so I switched to the SDMG. The Space Dolphin machine gun was dealing very consistent damage, but it was just too hard to aim. So the all too powerful Planetary Annihilation ended up being my main choice of weapon here. In terms of the actual fight, we weren't doing all too bad. Most of the projectiles were surprisingly slowed down by the water, and the Planetary Annihilation was doing solid, consistent, easy damage. The lingering projectiles the Guardians left behind were somewhat painful to dodge, but it wasn't too bad. Now with the Guardian Defender, okay, that was a cheap hit, come on. We move on to the final phase of the fight. In this final phase, the projectiles weren't slowed down by the water, but all in all, it's a pretty easy phase. There were some attacks that were slightly awkward to dodge, but I pop adrenaline and completely melt the final chicken ball. Not a bad first boss. We were cutting it kind of close in the final phase, I'll admit, but it was fairly easy. So now we've defeated the Guardians, the natural next step we can take is to defeat Providence. Now, surely Providence can't be that bad. I mean, I beat her in Infernum the other day. After some brief testing, I found the Planetary Annihilation to still be the best weapon against her. And now, this is the attack I was kind of scared of going into this fight, as we had essentially no precision with our movements, so we had to pray we didn't get hit. Well, we didn't die, but we took quite a few holy stars to the face. This could end pretty badly. Luckily though, on the contrary, her alternate attack was very easy. But it's just this one that's complete nightmare fuel in a flooded world like ours. We managed to stay in a good position for this cycle though, so we ended up not even getting hit. And in case you're wondering, the laser attack is still absolute piss. Never fight her in the underworld. Actually, now that I mention that, we're probably not going to be able to fight her in the underworld. Like, we could use the lava shark of course, but we're going to have to basically face tank her. Okay, here comes the harder variant of this attack. I made sure to stay as far away as possible for this one. I stayed in a relatively good position and ended up coming out unscathed, dodging one of the attacks. Now we've got her to her Guardians phase, which doesn't really do much, except heal her. So I just went on autopilot and let the Planetary Annihilation do its thing. Her Guardians would eventually fall, and now it was a sprint to the finish for both of us. I take her down to a measly 60,000 health using adrenaline. We had this fight in the bag, although she casted the literal Great Wall of China of these fireballs, and I was about to die. This is the worst possible attack she could have done. If I get hit once, I'm dead. Luckily my heal came off cooldown, so that became the perfect safety net for me. And with her final barrage of holy stars over, I claim victory. Not bad for a first attempt, I'll say that. I open the treasure bag and get no ranged weapons. But the divine geodes are pretty useful, so I'll keep them. There were some pretty interesting weapons we could make with these. But if you know me, you'll know that we never upgrade our gear properly. I live by the phrase all balls, no brain. Stormweaver can't be too bad, right? Like the first phase, pretty much just circle him and you're golden. I led him a bit closer to the surface and then began the circling strategy. The laser beam can catch you sometimes, but as long as you're doing the right movements, you should be mostly fine. For example, I went too far inwards here and got hit. And the exact same thing happened here when I tried to dash towards him. We moved though, I tried again. However, I made the exact same mistake again. I decided at this point maybe the Fishron wings would help out here, so I thought we'd re-challenge him. There's no way we can't beat him the way we are now. Big shout out to the Vortex Armor's stealth ability. This was dealing insane damage to the Duke, although I'd have to disable it for the third phase as we would be dashing a lot. I think it's needless to say here, this boss was a piece of cake. Of course we don't get the wings, but you know what they say. If at first you don't succeed, buy some treasure bags from a modded NPC. And yeah, I nearly just sold the Fishron wings. Okay, now we have those, surely this fight will be a breeze, except our lack of full speed. Yikes. Maybe we should go back to the fin wings. So I switched back to them, and this time I really focused on how his attack patterns work. I noticed that if you go inside of his little circle here, then you are basically guaranteed a hit. So I tried to stay away from doing that. Okay, now we're talking, we've made it to the second phase. This part of the fight is nothing too special, you just have to dash away from him whenever you hear the lightning sound. And definitely dash away from him, not towards him. Anyways, the Celebration Mark II was making very short work of this worm, until I took a stupid headshot and died. I think at this point I'd essentially perfected my strategy for the first phase. All you have to do is follow his tail as closely as possible and stay on the outside of his circle, never on the inside. Now we'd reached the second phase again, I made sure this time not to take any stupid headshots. We made it to the final phase where he summons tornado walls and coils around you, but still the worm was no match for us. We open up our treasure bag and obtain the Storm, another Daedalus Stormbow archetype of weapon, but by no means am I complaining here. This was, however, not the weapon I was looking for, so I re-challenged the Stormweaver. Okay, Storm Dragoon. Shit. Here we go again. 1, you're kidding me, that's a 10% drop. 2, oh okay, 2. Alright, so this is the Storm Dragoon I was after, kind of like a beefed up clockwork assault rifle. I reforged it to Unreal, and then we moved on with the next logical step in progression. Poltergeist. Or Ceaseless Void, let's find out. Yep, I'm not doing progression skips this time, unless I feel like it. So my first instinct here was to completely obliterate the dark energies with the Celebration Mark II, which I'll admit there certainly were better options I could have chosen, but it was what I had, so it was what I used. I used the Planetary Annihilation in this phase so I could focus more on dodging, as this phase right here is the bane of my existence. Anyways, we managed to claw our way through it, so it was looking like there was light at the end of the tunnel. Although that facade quickly wore off as I realized how outclassed I really was. Yep, I lied through my shig. I'm going back on that promise to not do progression skips. Poltergeist, here I come. I can wholeheartedly promise you guys the next challenge I do is not gonna be easy. A good old Poltergeist, you know, if you just can't quite get past Providence, you do Poltergeist instead, get some overpowered gear and completely shred everything pre-Devourer of Gods. I'll admit here we definitely were in need of a weapon and armor and accessory upgrade, but although our damage was low, the situation was stable. The Planetary Annihilation just really is such a versatile weapon. Anyways, this fight really hasn't been anything special so far. The projectiles were slightly harder to dodge seeing as we had less precision in our movements and less agility, but all in all, it was nothing too bad. With Polter's clone taken down, it's now just a sprint to the end of the fight, and I'm Sonic the Hedgehog. Time to get some loot, except I left the Zerg potion on, so I'm getting completely pummeled by these dungeon enemies. Anyways, I return to the comfort of my own home to open this treasure bag. I get the ranged weapon, but more importantly, Ruinous Souls. Now, let's return to a previous point in progression here. We still had Underworld Providence and Cygnus to take down, so I gave Cygnus a shot on my little lava shark. Yeah, I think that went about as well as I'd expected. Seeing as how catastrophically terrible that fight went, I don't think we have any chance against Underworld Providence, which means we're gonna be stuck with the Asgard's Valor for the rest of the game. Luckily though, Cygnus isn't actually required because Calamity loves progression skips. There's actually a second recipe for the Cosmic Worm which just requires a butt ton of Luminite and Necroplasm. So I thought we'd test the waters here and give the Devourer of Gods a quick go. After all, what could possibly go wrong? Since we were pretty much permanently airborne, this guy was locked and loaded onto us like a Infernum Devourer of Gods. Ah yes, death from stepping on a Lego brick. Okay, we needed some better gear, so I decided to summon in the boss again. What am I doing? What am I actually thinking when I record this game? It's always just blitz through every single boss at once, like take your time. I have to give credit where credit's due though, the Storm Dragoon was better than the Daemon's Flame against this boss. But if you're watching this video for advice about this game, please do not follow in my footsteps. Do what I say, not what I do. Because this is not a viable weapon in the slightest. Okay, I finally caved and decided we can upgrade our gear. In terms of armor, I was probably going to go for Blood Flare, but one weapon in particular caught my mind. The Monsoon. A post-Poltergeist upgrade to the Tsunami, which I remember being exceptionally good for the Devourer of Gods. To get it though, we were going to need to extract a couple of teeth from a Reaver Shark, which in this playthrough is just your average Tuesday. We were being surrounded by some very frightening creatures, but we were just as nimble in the water as they were. So we ended up getting what we needed with relative ease. However, I wasn't done just yet. You see, I just remembered the existence of something that could change our fate entirely. Something I hadn't used since my last no-hit run, about a year ago. If you haven't guessed already, the Omega Blue armor is what we were after. A pretty niche armor set, used mainly for no hits, but this could just be what we're looking for in this run. Right off the bat, it gives a pretty huge upgrade to every class's damage, meaning that we could dabble into other classes, not just ranged. You may have also noticed these tentacle Kagane looking things protruding from the back of our Terrarian. The catch of this armor set is that you no longer have any natural life regen, but get close enough to an enemy and these tentacles will latch on, deal damage and steal life, which in my humble opinion I think would synergize pretty well with this boss, considering we're going to be ramming through him a lot. Doesn't change the fact that I'm bad at the game. Screw it, we try again. Doesn't matter if you fall down 99 times, if you pick yourself up 100 times you still haven't lost. I did eventually get into a rhythm with this fight, but I found that our dash just wasn't long enough. We were going to need the Elysian Aegis. Perhaps not right this second at least, but I know Yaren's gonna be pretty tough without it. Oh, and surprise surprise, we got Dog to his second phase. I've been using the Valediction at this point as it is a very consistent weapon against the dog. I'd kind of adopted a strategy for this fight much like Infernum Dog. You just do the good old sine wave pattern with him, ram dash through his head and die. Easy as that. The first phase was essentially the same too, except he's slightly slower and much less aggressive. Still though, things just weren't working out for us. I finally decided to take my accessory loadout into account. At this point, I still hadn't made the Abyssal Diving Suit, so that was the first on my list of priorities. I then replaced the Celestial Shell of the Angel Treads, still not the most optimized accessory loadout, but it's better than what we had before. The Abyssal Diving Suit allows us to fall much faster in liquids, which is an absolute godsend in this playthrough. But there were still some things we could do to our loadout. After a couple more failures, I purged everything from my accessories except the absolute bare essentials. The Abyssal Diving Suit already maxes out our water mobility, so we don't need any other accessories for that. Also meaning that we no longer need the fin wings, so we can use the highest tier of wings available. And finally, to make up for our subpar dash, I throw in the Leviathan Ambergris and begin the fight. The Ambergris heavily increases our dash velocity and also decreases the cooldown, making our Asgard's Valor on par with the Elysian Aegis. Also, now that we have Elysian wings equipped, our flight time, speed, and most importantly of all, agility are heavily increased too. This doesn't help us take out Dog, I don't know what will. I was going to make the Monsoon when I made the Omega Blue armor, but I ran out of Reaper Teeth. Don't get me wrong, the Valediction's a great substitute, but you honestly haven't seen the Monsoon on this boss. Also, the Omega Blue set bonus is overpowered. Now with enough Reaper Teeth, I craft the Monsoon and get back to fighting this boss. The great thing about this weapon is that wooden arrows are actually the best with it. Also, look at that DPS. With some careful evasion this time, I managed to get all the way up to the second phase. Let's hope things go well. I might just delete my channel. The Devourer is much more aggressive and agile in his second phase, meaning you have to be very careful not to make him coil around you. And I forgot to use my mount. I don't think you guys understand how awkward and floaty movement is underwater. This time I remember to hop on the lava shock when I see the telegraphs and we dodged the lasers flawlessly. We were rapidly approaching the end of the fight, my palms were getting sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. But will I be able to dodge this seemingly easy attack? Of course not. Back to square one again, but not entirely. With every single attempt we do and fail, we obtain skill. The Devourer of Gods will stay the same old cosmic worm forever, but we are ever changing, always enhancing our skill, optimizing our loadout, changing up our strategies. That right there is the difference between us, the Terrarian, and this stupid worm. There's no way I'm losing to this guy now, that would just be embarrassing. We get past what is hopefully the final laser section, and with the power of Sharknadoes, we end the cosmic worm's reign of terror. Oh, okay. I have to say that was probably the most challenging fight yet. We open our treasure bag and get the Staff of the Mech Worm, a very nice summoning weapon, Cosmolite Bars, and the Nebulous Core. Now we were really making some progress. We needed some Galactica singularities for upcoming recipes, so I finally decided to fight Astromedeus. He was easy. Now it's time for the ever so fun post-Devourer upgrade spree. Now that we've crafted our Cosmic Anvil, we can make pretty much every recipe imaginable. The first one I make being the Cleansing Blaze, a flamethrower that needs no explanation. I fought King Slime about 20 times to get some gel, and now allow me to show you why I made this weapon. While I completely obliterate the Pumpkin Moon for some Nightmare Fuel, let's discuss upgrades. The Godslayer armor would be nice and all, but for the time being I'm considering staying with Omega Blue. I don't particularly struggle with Yaren too much, and I feel like this armor set could synergize very well, especially as we'll be ramming into him tons of times. If we do get hit, the lifesteal from the set bonus should be enough to sustain us. Also, watch me trash my Nightmare Fuel. I didn't find out till 20 minutes later. Okay, I didn't really want to go through the rest of the event, so I decided we'd test the waters with Yaren. Is my loadout optimal? Nah. Do I care? Not one bit. It was pretty likely we weren't going to be able to get the Asgardian Aegis, so the Asgard's Valor is the only ram dash we have. Which I can make do with, I'm not complaining, but it's not exactly optimal, is it? We somehow managed to get Yaren to his second sub phase, which is surprising, but I forget to dash here and the fight ends early. Okay, that was a very promising first attempt. I made the Executioner's Blade as I know that weapon is good for Yaren, then we go for another attempt. Okay, let's forget about our 1000 IQ play, we've nearly made it to the second phase. Okay, this is kinda scary, I didn't think we'd get this far. The dash windows are going to be pretty tight with the Asgard's Valor, I'll say that for sure. And I can't say I'm excited for the huge fireball circles either. We put up a good fight, but we just weren't ready yet. Back to the moon events it is then, and also this is when I found out I trashed my Nightmare Fuel. I redo the Pumpkin Moon, then move on to the Frost Moon for endothermic energy. These Ice Queens were pretty annoying. Next up we have the Solar Eclipse for Dark Sun fragments, luckily we don't need as many of these. Now with those 3 events done, we can finally make some Ascendant Spirit Essence, allowing us to make some of the best armor sets and accessories in the entire mod. I craft the silver wings, but keep the Elysian wings on vanity because they look so much cooler. As for our dash, I mine out a decent chunk of terrain in the underworld to see if we can fight Cygnus and Providence. I'm really hoping this works, because I really don't fancy using the Asgard's Valor on the Exo mechs. Luckily, we somehow managed to just about crawl through Cygnus while being completely blind, which gives us a spark of hope for Providence. Okay, well I guess we're sticking with the Asgard's Valor after all. How about we experiment with some accessories? I tried replacing the Asgard's Valor with the Status Void Sash and using the Blazing Core in case Yaren rams into us. The Void Sash being the final upgrade to the Master Ninja Gear, which unfortunately can't ram through enemies, and the Blazing Core allowing you to parry enemies, completely nullifying their damage, with a cooldown of course, and releasing a ton of stars when you do. While this did seem like the perfect solution on paper, it ended up being more awkward than practical. I guess the Asgard's Valor really is our best option. While the Executioner's Blade was a half decent option against Yaren, there was something better that I've been waiting to get. One of the drops from the Devourer to be more precise. You may be internally screaming right now asking, why don't you just buy the treasure bag? I think that's a bit too cheesy. If we don't get the thing this time, then I guess I will. But I was looking for a challenge, and the Devourer was willing to offer. I even made a new weapon just for this fight, the Pack. A direct upgrade to the Scorpio, so this thing has to be good. Okay, finally, that took long enough. Sadly, we don't get it on this attempt, so I just buy the treasure bags. And there we go, the Eradicator. I also replaced the Leviathan Ambergris with the Dark Sun Ring. Okay, let me tell you about the Eradicator. This thing is so stupidly overpowered, it can carry you through the rest of the game. In fact, no, it literally does in one of my upcoming challenges. This weapon throws out discs that fire homing lasers with incredible range, so this thing could be easier to use. Also, I forgot to mention we're fighting Yaren in the Sulphurous Sea because of the increased visibility. I have to say, the extra minions from the Dark Sun Ring and this weapon are completely carrying us through the fight. Like, we went through that entire sub-phase before he could even complete the first cycle. Also, Clutch of the Century right here. Now we're really getting into the scary portion of the fight where Yaren summons these huge circles of fireballs. And whatever this attack is, shouldn't have went above it, but yeah. Plus, he also teleports like Phase 3 Duke Fishron. I got into a kind of bad spot here, I was hoping I could get out of the situation, but I perished. I'm not a scientist when it comes to Yaren's fireball circles, but he likes to alternate between fast and dense ones. The fast ones are fairly easily dodged by staying close to them, but the dense ones, just run and pray. Also, hold on, we're about to beat Yaren, when did this happen? And we're on full health? Okay, alright. This is why I said the Eradicator is overpowered. So, we open the treasure bag and get the goods, the best wings in the entire game and Yaren's soul fragments. We are now officially in the final portion of the game with just 2 bosses left. Oh, and since we're post Yara now, I can pick up the lesbians of finality. Anyways, I had a plan of how we could take down Underworld Providence somewhat legitimately. Looking back now, I could have just done Nighttime Providence, but I don't think that would have been any easier. In the first part of the series, I used the lava shark to take down the wall of flesh. My logic was that if we're riding the lava shark, then we can breathe lava. Going even further, let's assume our Terrarian can hold their breath, just as long as a normal human can. This means that we can jump out the water for just a few seconds at a time to dodge these holy stars. And with the power of mental gymnastics and tentacles, we take down Underworld Providence. We can finally upgrade our dash for the first time since Plantera. With my first dash upgrade in what seemed like a century, I mined some more core as there was a weapon I had my eyes set on. The ace is high, however it requires a revolver in its recipe. I wish I was lying when I said it took over 10 minutes to get this thing with a mod that speeds up time while you're sleeping, and also the recipe from Fargo's Mutant mod. No wonder I never see people using this thing. Anyways, the actual concept of this weapon is really cool, I think. Shooting out playing cards with each variant having a different effect. And so, with basically no upgrades, we summon in Supreme Calamitas. I don't know why I thought this was a good idea. But let's be real though, Supreme Calamitas shouldn't be too hard. As always, the first bullet hell is trivial, but the floatiness of the water does trip me up. For the Brimstone Hearts, I know I could have used something like the Chicken Cannon, but the Eradicator was the best thing I had. With the Hearts taken care of though, we now get to test out the Aces High. I'll say immediately, the damage on this thing is very good, although the velocity is kind of slow because of the water. Escal does definitely seem doable, but we haven't tried the Exomex yet. And of course, throughout this entire playthrough, I haven't made a single piece of the Codebreaker. I was smart enough to place down some Power Cell factories though, so at least give me some credit where credit's due. Anyways, Planetoid schematic, Jungle schematic, Underworld schematic, Snow schematic, and we're done. Drayden joins our Hot Top stream, and who do we pick first? It's always going to be arrows. Now from what my eyes are picking up so far, nothing seems too exceptionally different in this fight. The Eradicator is doing very flawless damage. Soon enough, we make it to the second phase with Thanos and the twins. Just like always, their greatest weakness is diagonal movement. Then Ares joins the party again, with us now facing all three Exos at once, which on paper sounds like the hardest phase, but is actually in practicality the very easiest. Seriously, from my recent Infernum playthrough, the Exos were one of the bosses that really were made so much better. Okay, it's 4 AM, everyone else has left, but Ares just hasn't picked up the hint. I'll admit now the floatiness of the water really is making things awkward, and oh no, yeah, we've screwed ourselves over here. I'm on basically no health, I moved to the right when I should have moved to the left, and we succumb to our fate. I'll admit that exceeded my expectations for the first attempt, so I jumped right back into the fight. Seriously, in my next challenge, the Eradicator is gonna save us. With some well-timed adrenaline, I nuke away most of this dude's health. I find myself in a better position for his signature attack. Will we be able to survive this? Well, I know Ares certainly won't. Now with the first and arguably hardest of the three mechs defeated, we move on to Thanatos, who is the sole reason why I wanted the Asgardian Aegis so badly. If you showed this to a Terraria player in 2011, I think they would explode. Also, we got Adrenaline baby, let's go. Once you get either of these mechs to a certain health threshold, you'll be left alone with the one with the lowest health. This time being Thanatos. Nothing new here except he spams a ton of lasers and has a new signature attack. Kind of hard to dodge with how floaty we are, but you just have to dash to the side and let him coil around you. Soon enough he'll take a chill pill and then you can just dash through him and run away. Thanatos? More like Thanatoast. Shit. Do you ever just feel like giving up on everything in life? It's what the evil version of me would say, but I'm gonna keep going and going and going and going until we kill this guy. First of all, we'd been needing to upgrade our armor for a while, so I went for the Ranger Auric Tesla set. I also made the Elemental Quiver to make up for the Aces High's poor velocity. I'd already crafted the Tarragon, Bloodflare and Godslayer set, so all I had to do now was mine some Auric ore. And now we can finally put on the ultimate armor set. The culmination of all the previous armors I made not 5 minutes ago. Anyways, let's get back to the Exos, shall we? The Aces High was doing excellent damage to the Exos alongside the Lesbians and the Staff of the Mechworm. I did the same strategy of holding Adrenaline till we have Ares on his own and completely nuked him. I'll be honest, the progress we were making in this fight was spectacular. This time I did the twins first instead of Thanatos as I found them harder. Still though, we just weren't getting very far with them. I crafted the sponge and replaced the nebulous core with it. Honestly, I just love the sponge. It does make us a heck of a lot tankier, but doesn't change the fact that I'm bad at dodging. This time I locked in and we made it all the way to Thanos, then the twins. I'm really hoping a sponge can help us tank through this phase of the fight. But alas, Artemis and Apollo are an impenetrable wall that we cannot find a way to get past. I felt so defeated I even tried S-Cow again. The bullet hells are actually a pretty nice break from the Exos. Although once again the floatiness really wasn't doing us any favours here. To my surprise though, we'd actually made it to the 3rd bullet hell, but that was as far as we were gonna make it. We still hadn't obtained the chicken cannon, so I thought Yaren once again. Please never leave me, operator. There was actually a little idea I'd cooked up while dying to the Exos. A little something involving a pre-Moonlord accessory. You see, the thing with the Neptune's shell, and of course its upgrades, it doesn't enhance your water mobility, but in fact fundamentally changes it. While your horizontal speed is heavily decreased, your vertical agility is comparable to that of being on land, which for the Exos would be very counterintuitive. It works perfectly for S-Cow, especially for the brothers phase where all you have to do is slowly move up and down. To my surprise, this was working very well. This is the furthest we'd made it into the fight so far. Don't even ask how I got hit here. It was genuinely looking like we were gonna win, although 2 stupid hits changed that. Desperately clinging on to hope and hunting for a solution other than getting good at the game, I try the Exos once again. While I wasn't using the Celestial Shell right now, I knew that there would be one point in this fight where it would come in very useful. I'll tell you one thing, it's certainly not Ares, and most definitely not Thanatos either. We're going to use the Celestial Shell on the twins. The idea here is that your slow diagonal movement will allow you to dodge most of their projectiles except when you run directly into them. But assuming that you don't do that, I think we've discovered the perfect method. While it is kinda cheesy, for the laser I just used a Rod of Discord. This method was so much better than just using wings, but we still weren't good enough. I stuck with it though, and found a good rhythm with this section of the fight. You just have to make sure to always face away from the orange dude. And just like that, we've taken out Artemis and Apollo. Now all we have to do is get through the rest of the fight. Yes, that was me ending the recording. I called it quits for the day, got some rest, and tried again with a fresh head the following day. It was at this point I finally decided we needed to go all out to defeat this boss. With no other way to make the boss easier for me, I just had to make me harder for the boss. I replaced my Aquatic Heart with the Rampart of Deities, replaced my Dark Sun Ring with the Chalice of the Blood God, and only after reforging all of my accessories to warding and using the Resilient Candle, do I begin the fight once more. And hopefully for the final time. Nah, I'm just kidding, bro. We had finally perfected our strategy in this fight, holding Adrenaline for Ares, taking him down first, then Thanatos, then the twins. I have to say, I'm genuinely surprised at the difficulty of that fight. Literally everything was smooth sailing until we hit Devourer of Gods. Anyways, I opened my treasure bag and obtained the beloved Draiden's Heart, along with some Exo Prisms and a new ranged weapon, the Surge Driver. It's not that good. Anyways, now we've defeated the Exomechs, there is only one path left for us to go down. Our final rite of passage, if you will, where we take what we've learnt from the Exomechs and every boss prior, and demonstrate it to our utmost capability in one final challenge. Will this be a walk in the park for us, or will it be a true test of our skill? Because I seriously can't imagine anything harder than the Exos. Catastrophe and Cataclysm. These two names will strike fear in any Calamity player, young or old, new or experienced. I was on the edge of dying here, but luckily the Draiden's Heart we got from the Exos completely saved us. Anyways, I think this flooded world actually makes the two brothers easier, as moving slowly up and down will pretty much dodge all of their attacks. And now we move back onto S-Cow. I was feeling pretty spent from taking down the Exos, but it's nothing too serious. For this point in the fight, I put my wings back on as we were going to need to be pretty fast to dodge the huge meatball. And by huge meatball, I mean this guy in the center. We don't talk about it, okay? We don't talk. I spent a bit of time off camera warming up for this fight and testing out a few weapons that we could possibly use. And the one I found to be the most effective by far is the Tyranny's End, the Calamity Mod's ultimate sniper rifle. Okay, real quick, I am aware that musket balls are better on this weapon, but I forgot to buy some, so I used Godslayer slugs instead. Out of all the weapons I tested, including the EXO tier weapons, I found this one to have the most DPS by a long shot. The only catch being is that it takes skill to aim, which, not to toot my own shig, but I think I've built up quite a decent amount in the past playthroughs I've been doing. For the brothers, I used the chicken cannon instead so I can focus more on dodging and less on aiming. And now, we've clawed ourselves all the way back to where we were previously. I'm not gonna dash into you this time, meatball. Anyways, for my first attempt with this weapon, things were going exceptionally well. There's absolutely no way I can let myself fail here. The final bullet hell has now arrived. Let's hope I've gotten used to the floatiness of the water by now. Nearly flawless. Escal throws out literally every single possible attack to try and stop us, but it's too late. Things just aren't gonna go well for you when you're challenging the literal King of the Seas in their own domain, especially if the King of the Seas is armed with a sniper rifle. And there we go, the Supreme Witch Calamitaz finally gives up and accepts her fate. Seriously, this weapon is OP though. As the box arena crumbles to ashes and our treasure bag slowly sinks to the ground, we can finally say we beat the game of our entire world being underwater. But I'm not done just yet. We still had to at least try a boss rush. So I crafted the Draiden's Forge, made some Shadow Spec bars, and then went to craft the best ranged weapon in the we need Plague Soul canisters. Not to worry though, because one goated commenter told me I can get them from fishing crates. I farmed just enough to summon in the Plaguebringer, who also drops Plague Soul canisters too. And now we can finally make the Contagion. Then I make the Soma Prime, the final upgrade to the Kingsbane. I farm some more Exo Prisms, then some Ashes of Annihilation. It was pretty easy. I make a full set of Demon Shade armor. Then to top everything all off, the icing on the cake, I make the Endogenesis. And now we're finally ready to try the boss rush. Slight issue though, I cannot see Jack. Like seriously, it is so stupidly dark and I'm so floaty, it's hard to dodge anything. Okay, I guess I'll give it 2 more goes then. Just like in the first episode, Skeletron's skulls are still stupidly slow. That's a tongue twister. Why am I not in the water? I did not consent to this. Is the playthrough over? Okay, I'm trying this one more time. If I die, the video's over. Oh yeah, boy, I'm pulling these skill moves on the cow clone. Oh yeah. Oh look at me go. Thank you all so much for watching this series, and an even bigger thank you to— Yeah, I think that's just about enough out of you past me. If you did genuinely watch through this entire video though, then I really do appreciate that. If you do, for whatever reason, want to see more videos like these, but you're a broke fuck like me, worry not, there are still ways you can support my channel. I think if you give the video a fat shiggin' like, subscribe to my channel if you want to see more, maybe comment some stupid shit like the word biscuit, then I think we'll be even. Feel free to join my Discord server if you want to talk to a bunch of dumbasses like me, including me. Anyways, I'm tired. I'm gonna go to sleep. Don't forget to make a cup of tea, and have a fucking magnificent day. See ya.